What up, everybody? Scuff D here, and welcome to the Training Cage. Today, we're going to be talking about the value of exchange. The value of exchange is, it's a term that I don't know if it carries over to every game or if it's called something differently in every game. But basically, what it is, it's the theory or the realization of the cost of exchanging one card for another, or dealing damage to your opponent, and getting the most value out of that. Why some cards are better than others for this, and why others are worth choosing over other cards or in certain situations. It's very hard to break it down and show an example just straight up, because exchange in damage can come in a variety of ways. It can come from multiple sources that combo. It can come from cards that are just singular driven. One card, one effect. It can come from cards that you require multiple actions to get rid of a card or removal, as well as cards that just deal multiple damage, or in conjunction with another card get more out of them. So there's a lot of what that equates out to. For starters, let's talk about the Sons of Horus Legion as just a prime example as the core. And I'm going to them because they're the starter faction. They're the faction that you start with the game with. They're basically every faction to some degree that has varying cards of similar effect kind of function or are derived from how these Sons of Horus function. Your main warlord, your common warlord, not epic, not rare, legendary, common. This is who you start the game with, Garviel Loken. Pay 2 to deal 2 damage. That's the exchange. You turn 2 energy into 2 damage. It's a 1-for-1 exchange. Very straightforward. The fact that it can go on any unit is really where you get the base for that. You can deal 2 damage to a warlord. You can deal 2 damage to a troop. It doesn't matter what the type of the troop is. By varying degrees, Ezekiel Abaddon can deal 3 damage to a non-warlord enemy for 2. He's dealing more for the same cost, but it cannot be to the warlord. And on the same flip page, and the same expansion, Erlin pays 2 to deal 3 damage to the enemy warlord. That kind of set the tone. Roughly 1 energy for 1 damage is good. If you're getting a little extra for a specific type of target, that's better. Right? But it goes further, because then we start to see that in other cards in play. We start to see cards like Quickfire, which is just 1 energy to deal 2 damage, which is less than an ability. But why does it cost less? Well, number one, the ability is always available. That's always important to note. A warlord with an ability has always got an ability available. As time has gone on, we've seen the deal 2 damage ability added to multiple warlords, right? We've seen it added to Dynat, who has the deal 2 damage, Nev, trying to think here. I think we've got it with Gigor Felhan. It's a very common theme, the deal 2 damage, but because of the higher rarities, because of the variation, a lot of them have different conditionals, right? For instance, Dynat has got stun if it's a troop, stun it, right? Or if you've got good old fashioned Santar can deal 3 damage to a Astartes or infantry, right? Not necessarily to vehicles, troops, or structures. You've got Gilliman, who can deal 2 damage or create a card. You've got Remus, who can deal 2 damage to the enemy warlord, or he's got a flexibility option to give himself Survivor 1, so instead of dealing that 3 damage. There's all those variations, but 2 energy for an effect based around that. That's it. That's basically the exchange. So cards that give you less, cost less and give you the same or more, tend to be better, but they cost less because, number one, they're cards in your deck. You have to draw them. You can only use it twice. That's always something worth noting. Okay, Quickfire is a common deal 2 damage for 1 energy. That's nice, but you're only going to be able to play this card twice in a game. So that is the fact. You're not drawing any cards from this. This isn't a constant ability for you. This isn't an ability on a troop. This is a card. And then you've got other cards like Void Engagement, which at one time was 3 damage as far as the effect goes, but it's a conditional. You're drawing a card, okay, if it's a tactic, which generally is not hard to do in most decks, but if it doesn't, and you don't get anything out of it, you're dealing 3 damage. Now it's deal 2 damage. So it's again 1 for 2, but you're also getting a card, and it's a conditional 2. So in terms of balance, in terms of exchange, those cards are even in some degree in scope, and they're shaped by that 1 energy for 1 damage, 2 energy for 2 damage. You've got this upgraded even further when you start to see cards like Chariot of the Gods. And again, this is kind of like the backbone structure for your typical deal X damage Legion tactic, right? Deal 4 damage, draw a card for 4 energy. Whereas the Emperor's Children have got 4 with a perfection effect, right? Deal 3 damage, aha, but if the target dies, you draw 2 cards. It's a little bit better. In terms of drawing, less damage, same cost. Exchange. Damage for cost. That's core number 1. How are you paying energy? Are you getting an even exchange? At the same rate, following that pattern, 1 energy equaling 1 damage, you get Vengeful Spirit, which is 8 damage for 8 energy. It's a fairly consistent pattern. That kind of sets the precedence. So there are cards that, and because this is just that large volume and you're drawing a card, I mean, that's a pretty straightforward cost. It's a legendary. Makes sense, right? So following that pattern, there are some cards that break that mold, right? There are cards like Contrador. Contrador costs less, deals more than it costs, right? It costs 5, but it deals 7. Downside is it goes in your opponent's deck. So if you don't use it as a finisher, your opponent then potentially has access to use it against you. However, within the faction of the Iron Warriors, there's multiple cards that deal sources of damage, whether they are warlords like Perturabo, who is paying 2 over 2 turns. He's paying 4 to deal 6, and losing momentum by doing that. So that's why it's a fair value. Or you've got Precision Bombardment, which is 3 for 3, and if the target dies, it goes back to your deck and you draw a card. This is a prime example of a card that is a super key. I don't know. I can't think of any other term to describe it, but basically exceeding its value, and just by a minuscule level, but in the fact that you're dealing 3 for 3, but then in addition to that, if the target dies, it goes to your deck, you get the card back, and then you draw a card. So you're getting 3 damage, you're getting potentially the card back, and potentially drawing a card. That's 3 effects, plus the 3 damage for the same cost of 3, not for 4. It, in a way, is exceeding its effect, and any Iron Warrior player will tell you that Precision Bombardment is a 2 in your deck. It's a must. And there are multiple cards in the game that function like that. They all have value. They all roughly exchange fairly well for their cost. There are some that exchange less, but they're contingent upon other effects. For instance, we're going to talk about the old Fury from Above. Now it says 3 for 1 damage to a random enemy 3 times. I should note that this used to cost 3 and deal 4 damage, 1 to 4 different, or to 4 random enemies 4 times. So it was 1 energy for 1 damage, and even exchange there, but because it's a random enemy and you could ping multiple units, you're kind of like, it's not so effective. It gains value because the faction that it's a function in, the Raven Guard, are a combo-based faction, and simply 1 application of Sentenced 1 or Sentenced 2 on a target for 1 energy or for 2 energy, you can turn this 3 energy tactic for 5 energy. You could theoretically turn it into 8 energy, right? 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1, that's 9 energy. That's 9 damage for 5. 5 energy. I'm just theoretically saying that I used a more Dathan, right? I paid 2, I gave a target Sentence 2, and then I paid Fury from Above, and I did 9 damage for 5 energy. And I've still got theoretically 4 more energy or 2 to 4 energy left to do something with on my turn, depending on how late in the game is. But it's a combo-based faction, and it's a combo-based card, and that's why the effect in general is that way. It's low grade, it's low cost, it's an even, you could almost argue that it's below its exchange rate in the fact that it does, just by itself, if your opponent has got a couple troops out, you're not going to get a lot out of it, right? You're not going to get what you want out of it. But if your opponent has no troops out, you're going to get just 3 damage. If your opponent has no troops out and you have more out, you're not even going to get a card draw. You're not getting anything out of that. You're not even getting this back in your deck. It's no precision bombardment, right? So the faction itself is combo based. So it just therein lies the balance, and it's harder to explain that sometimes because you've got to take a look at all the pieces of the combo that could exist. You've got Numa Squad, you've got For Whom the Bell Tolls, you've got more Dathan, potentially you've got other stealth troops that you could give sentence to, or other effects that you've got waiting in the wings to add to it. So that is the strategy of Raven Guard, and that's why that is the way it is. It doesn't draw you a card, but Curse of the Raven does, and Curse of the Raven costs 2 and deals 1 and draws you a card. So Curse of the Raven costs 1 more than Quickfire, does 1 less damage, but it does it to all enemies, and you draw a card. By comparison, Frag Grenade costs 1, deals 1 damage. So you see the backbone here. We go back to Sons of Horus, we see the value of exchange. 1 energy, 1 damage to all enemies, 1 extra energy for Curse of the Raven, and you get a draw card. Plus, it's a rare card. That is the general outline as far as how damage works, as far as how value, playing energy, getting an even exchange for your damage. I want to talk about card exchange, and that's a very important feature. That is something that I talk about in every one of my, I feel like I talk about it in every one of my deck lists when I'm going over videos as far as my strategy. When I include troops in a deck, I like to have those cards that are troops that my opponent can't ignore, that my opponent has to spend resources on, right? And so that way they're putting those resources into my troops and not into my warlord, right? For instance, here we've got all these troops here. Your opponent doesn't want to let sit. They don't want to let a Kaiser Lane or Farron's Militia right from the get-go, nor do they want to have Las Rifle sections or the Mortar Carriers, Las Taul, Alpha Thetas. These aren't guys that your opponent wants to let you have access to. They want to spend cards to get rid of them. By themselves, roughly, they're fairly disposable, right? I mean, you've got a Seek and Destroy, can take care of Sagittari Squad, or an Abaddon, 1 card for 1 card, right? But with a warlord like the Ogryn Sergeant, who can give frontline, he makes it a little bit harder. And maybe with that, hang on, let me get back to the deck list here. So maybe with this Alpha Theta who's got 4 health, my opponent has got a Seek and Destroy, and they would normally be able to follow up with a Warlord. That's 2 actions. That's 1 card and 1 action to get rid of 1 card. First off, that in of itself is an even exchange. That's actually a pretty good exchange. If your opponent isn't immediately getting rid of a card here, they're taking away from dealing damage to your Warlord to deal with the troop, and they're spending more than 1 card to do it. That's the theory behind the value of exchange. If I've got a card like Lernia Hydra, and it hits out, boom, it's a big, nasty body. My opponent throws down a Melt-A-Bomb. It's gone. 1 card, 1 effect. And it's very possible, even though it increases the enemy tactics, if they've got 9 energy on their turn, they're able to use a Melt-A-Bomb. It can work. Or they could use a Win of the Week. 1 card for 1 card is a fair exchange. It's an even exchange. To my knowledge, there is not yet a card that is 0 cards for an effect. Even the trap cost itself, right? You play the trap, your opponent plays a troop, you lose the trap. Now, you could build a deck that keeps that trap alive for a little bit longer and get a little bit more value out of it, but generally, that's what you're going to get. You're getting 1 card for 1 card. There's no 0 cards to get rid of their cards. There just isn't. Even if you're playing traps, you have to play those cards, and you also have to deal with a lot of luck. Don't play traps. Just don't. That's the sidebar. But Lernia Hydra, Melt-A-Bomb, 1 card for 1 card. But if I have Lernia Hydra out and my opponent has to play 2 Crack Grenades, I've now forced them to play 2 tactics that they could have played on my Warlord on 1 card. And they've also wasted their entire turn. I mean, I don't even know if they could. On the following turn, that's 10 energy to play those 2 Crack Grenades, right? So, in that instance, if my opponent is spending more cards to get rid of a troop than they are on me, that's an optimal exchange, right? That's a fair exchange. For instance, you've got the Telemon Dreadnought, right? You've got the old, nasty frontline shield Survivor 3. I mean, it doesn't get much thicker than that, right? There's just no troop that is nastier. You could say you could get Ward, I guess, if you had Ward, Shield, Survivor, Frontline. That's brutal. This card here, if I play a Melt-A-Bomb, again, 1 card for 1 card, fair exchange. If I play Ancient Horrend, 1 card for 1 card, fair exchange. But this card in itself, forces generally multiple cards to be used upon it. Typically a damage card to get rid of that shield, perhaps a low troop cost. In some games, if you're playing up against it and you might throw 3 to 4 bodies against it to get rid of it, at that point, your opponent, even though this is a 9-cost card, if you have invested that many cards to get rid of one card, you are losing momentum, and that's where your opponent wants you. Or vice versa, if it's your card and your opponent is doing it to you, your opponent is losing momentum. And that's what you want, because they invest all those cards into it. The next turn, you play another Telemann Dreadnought, and they don't have those cards. They don't have those tools anymore. That is a good example of basically maximizing your exchange, right? So you've played this card, your opponent has played a lot of their cards, and now that you know that their resources are tapped, you drop the card down. You drop the card down that they got rid of. That ties into baiting your opponent out a little bit. And I might go into that in a different video a little bit long. I did telegraphed play in one of the training videos. It's similar along the lines, but with baiting your opponent out, you basically have a better understanding as far as what your opponent's options are, and you kind of force their response to see if they'll bite. And when they bite, if you are in a position, then you take advantage and you put down your second Telemann Dreadnought, and generally that Dreadnought is going to last longer. That Dreadnought might just even win you the game because your opponent doesn't have anything else to deal with it. Now, they could get lucky. They could still have one last option in there. It depends on the matchup. It really does. But generally, that's a good sign. If anytime you see your opponent playing multiple cards to get rid of one card, your stock just keeps going up. If they pay one card to get rid of one card or use an ability to get rid of a card, you're losing. They're not doing anything for you. That you're not gaining anything out of the exchange. If they're playing 2 cards for one card, that's a good thing. They're paying 3 cards, and when I say 3, I mean including like a warlord action or a troop on the board action, not just cards from hand. If they're spending that many actions to get rid of one card, they're losing assets. You're gaining because you can play another card. As long as you've got them in your hand, you can play another card and gain benefit. Now, it doesn't do you any good if you have no cards in hand and you throw down that Helios Mortar Carrier. Your opponent plays 3 cards, but your opponent has got 6 cards in hand still. They can deal with whatever you put down. Hand advantage does factor in to some degree with the exchange, but just for today, we're going to talk about not hand advantage. We're going to talk about just exchanging cards for cards. So that's why some cards are obviously better than others. I think Telemann Dreadnought is a prime example of that. Some of them have simpler answers. Some of them have, maintenance 4, which is obviously all demons do. This one here, Doombringer, is just easily disposable by a Crag Grenade, but on the turn that it comes into, theoretically, it could kill up to 6 troops, not to mention deal 2 damage with your Warlord. So, fair exchange, right? You're paying 8 energy to deal 2 plus damage that your opponent might be able to respond with on their turn and destroy for 3 energy. It doesn't seem like a whole lot, and granted, it is a 7/5 body, but if you play it right, that's often enough to lock a board. If you've baited your opponent out with a couple other vehicles that they've had to exhaust resources on, they play their crack grenade, then they send a flanking troop into their Helios, and they get rid of that, and then you drop another Helios, and then they play a hard removal option. Then you drop your Doombringer, and they are out of resources. And at that point, you are in an advantage. These are kind of fundamentals that as you play the game, the more time you have playing the game, you should kind of roughly come to understand. That's the value of exchange. If you are getting more cards out of your opponent's hand to get rid of your resources, while it sucks when they get rid of your Alpha Thetas, right? Like, I just played it, I just want to get some Mechandrites. And they get rid of it, and they pay 2 cards, and they get rid of it. You've cost them 2 cards. If they don't get rid of it, and you gain perhaps a Mechandrite that gives him shield, now they have to spend even more resources to get rid of him. Not to mention you can use that on other things, and you have more resources. That goes back to the other video I had with regards to the value. I think the value of play, or I forget the name of the video, but it's card generation, cards that give you value. Alpha Theta, Jubak, Kaiserlane, these are prime examples because they're giving you options. Your opponent doesn't want that, and again, they're investing resources to deny that to you, but if they invest more resources than it costs for you to pay that 1 Alpha Theta, it doesn't hurt you anything. This is why cards like Forged Complex are so good, because Forged Complex can create you Alpha Theta every turn, theoretically. You play another Alpha Theta. And then they get rid of that alpha theta. Then you play, a Scutari Protector or, something else that just they don't want to see on the board. So we've talked about these are rudiment. I can't say rudimentary concepts. These are core concepts, but they are very abstract. In the same way that meta is hard to explain, the value of exchange, well, it is fundamental, 1 energy for 1 damage, and there are some cards that exceed that, and some cards that don't exceed that, and you have to take a look at what are those options, like when you're building a deck, right? But then there are cards that it's harder to explain the combination or why do you want to pay a 1 energy frag grenade to get rid of 3 or 4 troops? That's a good exchange. If I play frag grenade and I get rid of all my opponent's Farron's militia, I'm up on that end. That's why this card can be a good card. You don't need to have 2 of it in your deck, but maybe having 1 of in a pinch can wipe 3 or 4 units out, and that becomes a good exchange in the game that you played it in. It may not be on paper, it's 1 for 1, but in a game, in execution, it could actually be much more than that. It could save you the game. But hard removal is a little bit of a more complicated tool to explain, right? And I haven't even gotten into abilities that deal damage from troops generally. The kicker is that troop has to survive. And in the same way that your opponent has to invest resources to get rid of the Alpha Theta, they've got to invest resources to get rid of your Chaggart squad. If they don't, the benefit that you gain, it's an added benefit. It's not necessarily a fair... I mean, this is a great deal, 1 energy for 3 damage. That blows away Quickfire. But the condition is your Chaggart squad has to survive. In addition to that, the condition is you also have to choose not to attack with Chaggart squad, who could deal 5. And honestly, I mean, I think if you left him on the board, you're just tapping for 3 every turn and forcing your opponent to deal with them. That's fair enough. But just the same, there's some conditions there that you have to meet in order to gain that value. So we're not going to talk too much about abilities because abilities in of themselves can be powerful, but they are always conditional upon your troops surviving. And to get there, first you have to overcome your opponent's responses. And the biggest response is hard removal. Ultimately, that falls back into that whole 1 card for 1 card. And that is why hard removal cards are so good and so important. That's also why hard removal cards are so limited. And when I say limited, I mean that they are limited in cost, and they are also limited because there is not a neutral hard removal option. This is very important to note because a lot of times I see this complaint. Generally from new players or players who are newer to the game or players who are building a neutral warlord deck and they come across this barrier, right? There are no hard removal options for the neutrals. Because if there were, that would allow every faction to have that neutral hard removal in their deck. And that would be very problematic. When you already have factions who could potentially have like 2 win of the weeks for Iron Warriors or for Iron Hands, right? They could have 2 win of the weeks, which is arguably one of the best hard removals in the game. But now they also have 2 neutral hard removals. Now they have got 4 times the way to remove anything that you can put down to deal with them. It's not an option. It's not something that is fair. The closest thing that they've honestly got, besides specific hard removal in timed Melt-A-Bomb, or not timed Melt-A-Bomb, Melt-A-Bomb itself, right? Specific vehicle or structure it can destroy. That's it. They've got Urtzi Malevolus who can destroy a vehicle. That's it. Right? He's specific, and it's a troop, and it's a rally. It's a one-time thing. The closest thing they've got beyond that, besides all the damage, or the random damage, is Eratan, which can deal a lot of damage to a non-warlord and stun it. You're not removing it, but you're also not going to suffer the consequences of it attacking you next turn as long as your opponent doesn't have stun. The downside of this is you have to target your opponents. If they've got ward or something, then they're protected. The ward is in itself kind of a nice protection. But hard removal, 5 energy, outflank for the Sons of Horus. That kind of sets the tone, right? That's the core concept. And then from there and everywhere we go, we've gone through the card by cards. You've seen why some of the hard removal options are better than others, or roughly in tune with outflank. Perfection's Flight from the Emperor's Children costs 1 more, but it also has Perfection Draw a card. So therefore you could potentially gain a card. So you're paying that 1 extra energy to draw a card with it. Whereas if you've got Sedition's Gate, which is 3 energy, you've got to destroy one of your troops, and you're destroying a random enemy troop, so you're not even getting the troop that you might want. Then you've got board clearing effects, such as the Conqueror, which is destroy all troops in play. But that's not just your opponent's, that's yours too, and that's why it costs so much, but that's also why it doesn't cost 10. Because if it destroyed all troops and all opponents' troops, it would probably cost 10 and not 8. The hard removal roughly is balanced across the board in that degree. Superior firepower costs 2. It destroys a troop with 3 or less attack. It's conditional. It's a very limiting condition. It's very effective when you want to use it, but that's all it's good for. It's not going to destroy you anything else. And the Iron Warriors themselves have a bevy of damage options, so they're not lacking in that department. The Thousand Suns have got the Psyker energy, right? And they've got Ashen Blow. Ashen Blow can destroy an enemy troop, but it costs them 3 turns of building up their Psyker. Now, that's not impossibly hard to do, but if they use that Ashen Blow on turn 3, and they exhaust their Psyker pool to 0 energy, it's going to take them 4 turns to get to play an Astral Warfare. That's a whole... The deeper I go with the value of exchange, the more things I uncover where it's like, this is just a whole other video subject, why the 2 energy pools is complex. But in of itself, Ashen Blow, whether you want to admit it or not, is fair. It costs 3 turns from your opponent not using any Psyker abilities, which isn't hard to do. On the same token, the Loyalist faction, Iron Hands, the World Eaters, and I believe there's one more who've got a 3 energy hard removal option, can play a hard removal on the second turn. On the second turn, if they really want to. I mean, granted, that's if you're using Win of the Week on turn 2, you're in a bad spot. But by that exchange, just in turn counter-wise, it's fair. Now, what might be a gripe for some is then that you can use Book of Magnus to get that card back, potentially, right? Yes and no. First off, this is a legendary card, so that end ties into that balance factor. You could create, Pyramid of Photep or Jubak and generate, or Kaizelane and generate other hard removal options for you in your games. So this doesn't do much anything different than those cards. It just is specific to your Psyker cards. It gets it back, and then you got to shuffle it in and then draw 3, and you might draw it, you might not. Ashen Blow, with it being a Psyker energy, drains your pool of Psyker juice, basically, and you can't do it on the following turn. Whereas, let's just say you had 2 outflanks in your hand. Your opponent drops a troop, you play outflank, they drop the next troop, they think that they got you, you play your second outflank. You can't do that with Ashen Blow, unless you have a great pool of Psyker juice already available. And depending on where you are in the game, that might be possible, but just arguably, so that's why Ashen Blow is a fair value. You can't do it back to back without ample juice support. Whereas there's no effort whatsoever for you to play double Win of the Week, double outflank, double Inescapable Cell. The Raven Guard, who have got a lot of combo options going on for them, don't have a hard removal. They have 0 hard removal, but they do have Inescapable Cell, which is kind of a bounce. So you're going to have to deal with that troop in 2 turns, but that's it. I mean, so it's conditional, and it costs 3. It's effective for what they do because it helps them buy them time, and that factors into their play style, and that's always going to be an element. So it's fair in the fact that you're paying 3, but if you don't maximize your turns away from that troop, you're just in the same spot as you were before, and it doesn't really do you any good. So when people complain about hard removal, they're like, oh, I played this 8-cost troop, man, and then my opponent played outflank, and they destroyed it. That's not fair. There's 2 things to go in there. Number 1, that is fair. You paid 1 card, they paid 1 card. That's a fair exchange. That's an even exchange. Whether you want to admit it or not, I don't care if your troop had shield, if it had survivor. If it doesn't have ward, it's susceptible to hard removal. And if it gets hard removed by any of those cards, 1 card for 1 card, it's a fair exchange. If your opponent plays Sedition's Gate and they're paying 1 card and a troop and 2 cards to get rid of your 1 card, guess what? You're up in the exchange, whether you want to admit it or not. Even if you paid 8 energy, 9 energy, 10 energy for that troop, you cost your opponent 2 cards. You could argue, I mean, if they played like a 1 Jurassic Scout, right, and then they played their Sedition's Gate 4 energy, and then they got to draw a card, you could argue that they broke even. Maybe they made out just a little bit ahead, but that's optimal. That's optimal. 9 times out of 10, let's be honest, World Eaters don't play Sedition's Gate like they should. So I used to run Sedition's Gate in my DAR a lot. With the changes to DAR, I don't I don't do Dar anymore. I'm sad. Sidebar. But hard removal, that's how that works. So getting upset about one card for one card, when I see that, I feel like people don't understand that that's an exchange. Or if you're playing Win of the Week, why is Win of the Week so good? Why is it arguably the best? Well, number one, the cost, right? And I've talked about this a little bit in the Iron Hands card by card reboot. Number one, the cost is 3. It's not 2, it's not 1, but it's 3. I mean, I can play it on turn 2. Again, as I said, late game, it allows you to play Win of the Week and then drop up to a 7 energy cost troop. The fact that you destroy a random troop from each player, but it does not require you to have one of your troops in play in order to use this, unlike Sedition's Gate, is the upside. As long as I don't have any troops out, I don't lose anything. I just lose a little bit of momentum because I don't have any troops out, and the Iron Hands are a troop-based faction. If the Iron Hands, you can argue it whether you want to or not, Antar can turtle up, but if he doesn't have a couple bodies to benefit from, to protect him late game or give him some damage dealing options late game against some grindy decks, he's not in a good spot. Ferrus Manus, if you're going to go Whispers and use his ability, you need troops. Shatterak Medusan definitely has troops, and Duquesne is protecting troops. They are a troop-based faction, whether you want to admit it or not. So if you don't have any troops, and you're playing Win of the Week, you're not in a great spot to begin with. If you're playing Win of the Week and you have troops, then you are paying the cost of destroying one of your troops randomly. And it might be the one that you don't want to destroy. It's a balanced card. Now, paying 3 energy to destroy my opponent's 9 energy tank, and I don't have any troops, and then my next turn I play, or on the same turn rather, I play the Marlock Terminator, which is just a poor example of a card to play. But let's just say I do that. I'm up a card, they're down a card, but it took me the end of the game to get to that point. And is it really that good? Because if we're in that stage of the game, is that going to do anything for me? None of these guys have rally effects. The best thing that you've got is that has a rally effect is the Terror Squad. The faction itself doesn't support, like here's a rally effect that just gets you a card, right? That's it. Look at 3 damage. Okay. Pump up troops. If you don't have any troops, he's not pumping anything up for you. The faction itself doesn't really have any immediate impact. They've got to have bodies on the board. So again, if you don't have bodies on the board and you're playing Win of the Week, I mean, Win of the Week is a good play. If you're paying 3 to get rid of a 9 energy, that's great. But you're not in a great spot if you can't follow it up by having troops on the board. You're just going to be right back where you were in the next turn because your opponent can play another large troop or 2 troops or the way it is. Now, when I'm saying all these cards about hard removal and damage options, I do feel like, especially as of late, it's worth noting a few cards that are new to the game, or newer to the game, that basically reverse the value of exchange. And when I say reverse, instead of paying energy to get rid of cards, you're paying energy to get cards. And specifically Emperor's Wrath and Desperate Defense. Desperate Defense, most definitely. There's multiple decks right now that build around that core feature, playing Desperate Defense and putting in play 2 troops plus giving them frontline and having multiple high cost cards. So if randomly you play Desperate Defense and then you play Auxilia Lehman Russ and Lernia Hydra and you both give them frontline, these are fat 7, 9, 8 bodies that have frontline now all of a sudden, and you just paid 10 energy for 16 energy worth of troops. That's a huge value. That's an awesome value in exchange. That's why this card is so good right now. That's why cards are playing it a lot. And if you can get to that stage in the game and drop those large bodies and your opponent cannot respond, it's one thing if they've got Win of the Week, but are they going to have 2 Win of the Weeks on the same turn? And if they do, what's preventing you from playing a Desperate Defense on your next turn and following up with 2 more large bodies? These cards are very key. Now, they obviously go better with certain warlords, and they don't go well with other warlords or other factions who don't have a supporting pool, who just would be drawing upon these neutral cards. Emperor's Wrath, conceivably, can put in play 3 Astartes from your deck that cost 4 or less. Now, if you've already played them, it's not going to do you any good. It doesn't create copies or anything like that. If you get 3 troops that cost 4 exactly, then you're getting 12 energy worth of play for 3. There are some decks out there who are making use of Jewel of Ultramar beforehand to reduce the cost of their Astartes by 1. So your 5 cost Astartes cost 4, and that makes them targetable by Emperor's Wrath. So therefore, you could technically get 15 costs of Astartes with Drop Pod for 9 energy. but that takes a lot of setup. It's very slow. It's very cumbersome. They don't give you frontline. You don't gain any rally. The benefit is they get drop pod. But Desperate Defense, boom, frontline protection and 2 random troops. It's not just Astartes, and there's no cost limit on there. Side by side, Emperor's Wrath pales in comparison to Desperate Defense. It just does. Even though it's a higher rarity and it's 1 less cost, it's just too conditional. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Emperor's Wrath has changed. I also wouldn't be surprised, quite frankly, if we don't see something similar for other factions down the road, whether that's Mechanicum, whether that is Chaos for Demons, which, by the way, I believe that was one of the cards. I think that was the alternate version of Desperate Defense was going to be some similar type of effect for demons. So it doesn't mean that that card won't come out at some point down the road. The point is, these cards are reversing that exchange. You're paying 1 cost for a card, but you're gaining multiple cards. In the same way that you could say, you're playing like a Kaiser Lane, and he generates multiple cards for you, and that's great value. Cards that are giving you more cards on the board for your opponent to have to invest resources in for more energy than the card costs is a good exchange. Does that mean that Desperate Defense goes in every deck? Absolutely not. If you've got a deck with just 3 or 4 cost troops, Desperate Defense is not a card for you. If you've got a deck with no troops at all, Desperate Defense is not a card for you. But that's why Desperate Defense is a good card for decks like Salamander's Vulcan, Assault Tarvets, who can maximize the value of that card and play that at 7 energy if everything goes right. And then on top of that, he's got access to some very fat Emperor's Children bodies, not to mention all the neutral bodies. So that's why those cards are good. I feel like I've talked a lot about stuff that is very abstract. I hope I've done the best I can to explain why trading 1 card for 1 card is good, trading 2 cards for 1 card is not good, and trading 3 and so on is a bad spot. Whether that's for you or your opponent, that's the way to go. I hope I've also done a good job of explaining hard removal and the value of hard removal, but also why hard removal is limited and why hard removal is a fair option. Every game, every card game has got some form of hard removal. A counterspell in Magic the Gathering, trap, I don't know what the card is in Yu-Gi-Oh, but I know there's like the trap card that just destroys a summon card. The Sense Alter Control from the old Star Wars collectible card game. Any card that cancels a card, and every card game has got some sort of canceling card. We don't have interrupts in Horus Heresy Legions. We have tactics that we play on our turn, so that's why that has to be the case. If we had interrupts, as much fun as it would be, I would love to see interrupts somehow add into this game. It would really complicate the turn-based nature of this game. If we had interrupts, it would make hard removal less attractive and interrupts more so, because you could affect your opponent on their turn as opposed to spending time on your turn. And then you can gain even more momentum on your following turn. Again, that's another topic. That's another video for a different discussion. But I hope I've done a decent job explaining that. Again, these are, I can't say rudimentary, these are core concepts for any card game, but they're hard ones to put into words. And that's why the training cage is really kind of about trying to break these concepts or these ideas, these terms, things that you may not be familiar with, or maybe you're already familiar with, but you don't quite really consciously think about it. That's the idea, is putting those into words and hopefully educating some people, especially those who don't necessarily play card games all the time, and that's why they get flustered or they're kind of confused. Like, well, why is this a good card? Why is Quickfire? Why do people always use Quickfire? It looks like 1 energy. Well, it's 1 energy to deal 2 damage. Why does everybody play Chariot of the Gods? 4 damage. Okay, draw a card. I mean, I feel like that's a bad example, because I think anybody would be like, oh, I like to deal 4 damage. Like, why wouldn't I play that card? Yeah, so I hope that's it, guys. If there's anything I missed, if there's any ideas or concepts that you would like to talk about, or if there's a question that you've got in regards to anything that I've talked about today, hit me up. Put something in the comments below. Let me know what you think. I went over this a lot in my head. I don't really have a draft because it's just something hard to put into words, but I figured I'd start with those core concepts, the value of exchange, because I think it's a very fair feature, and I often see it a lot in in the comments, in the global chat, on Discord, in Reddit. There's always somebody who seems to have that, whether that it's a complaint or a concern or a question. So I hope that this is helpful for them. And if you do happen to see somebody who's got those questions, complaints, or concerns, send them to check out this video, because I'd like to hear from them. I'd like to see if this video helps them out. So that's it for me, guys. Until next time, keep playing Legions, and we'll talk to you later.